I have heard this bill described in the past as, quote, the biggest upward transfer of wealth in history. I've also heard it described as a massive tax break for the middle class and working class. Now, obviously, media is a tricky thing to maneuver, and sometimes what you want to hear is what you'll believe. But you guys both being in the financial world, upward transfer of wealth, is there any truth to that? Andrew, anything like on the supply side, labor side, unemployment, stock market? So from those angles, is it fair to call the Tax Cuts and Jobs Act of 2017 the biggest upward transfer of wealth in human history?
I think if you look back from 2017 or 2018, from effective date to where we are today, we have avoided a recession. We had a global pandemic that we got through. And without that blip in time back in 2020, I mean, unemployment has been pretty low. And so when you look at that, you think, okay, well, maybe this was a win in a sense. And unemployment as a trend line has been coming down since 2010. 2010 unemployment was around 10% in the US. Prior to COVID, it was, I think, around 4%. And then, once we got over the kind of the COVID layoffs, et cetera, I mean, we trended in that kind of 3.5% range for several years. Also, if you look at what the stock market's done in that time, broadly speaking, the stock market has almost doubled over that period of time. If you look at the U.S. stock market, predominantly the S&P 500, the 500 largest companies. Uh, but again, there is some asterisk beside that stat because so much of that was led by, what people have heard as the Magnificent Seven. The Apple, Amazon, Nvidia, Netflix, Google.
Used to be known as the FANG stocks. Yeah, they've had many names.
You don't see companies like Edison Electric doubling over 7, 8 years. You didn't see companies like Kroger do the same thing. So again, it is skewed in that sense. So many who are proponents of this bill could say, "Hey, it actually did work. Unemployment was low. People made money that had money in the stock market." And then there was the real estate side as well of, where real estate values are today compared to what they were in 2018. But again, the biggest wild card in all of that was just the COVID pandemic, 0% interest rates, and how that spurred everything in there. So it's really hard if you were to take out that specific event and then look at where we'd be in the world today. I think it might look pretty different. I think that definitely kind of threw a little bit of mud in the clarity, so to speak, of, hey, did this actually work because of that, what we experienced 5 years ago?
Now, when corporate taxes, or you should say when the government cuts a tax in general, uh, does that mean someone else needs to pick up the tabs? Like if we're lowering taxes here, does that mean the government has to raise taxes over here to kind of make up for that, or is it just it's off the balance sheet and we lower the deficit, or lower deficit's trade? We lowered the debt, so.
If they were like me and you, absolutely they would have to, but apparently they don't have to because they they just keep going further and further into debt. I mean, part of what was in the bill was a raising of the debt limit, right? Up to I think 4 trillion is what it said. And so, it's like, yeah, you and I, if we cut income somewhere, we'd have to either make up for it somewhere else or we'd have to cut expenses. But the government doesn't seem to have to do that, right? So yeah, as far as I can tell, no. I mean, all of these bills seem to be deficits and adding to the debt, and yet they keep passing them. Again, big picture, I'm a little concerned about the U.S. debt. Individual level, I think most people are like, I'm just glad that I don't have to pay as much in taxes as I did yesterday. So
Right. Well, and that also feeds into the did it work question, right? So, like, yeah, it's great that the government potentially cut taxes here, but if the debt is still up, the deficit's still up, that it's not going down, they didn't actually cut expenses elsewhere. In fact, maybe cut programs to pay for these things. That all plays into the did this work? Did this bill serve its purpose question? So, Andrew, I'll kick it off with you. In your opinion, did the Tax Cuts and Job Act do its job? Did it work? And what makes you say yes or no?
I'd say it would, and it hinges predominantly from if we look at it from just a tax perspective, and predominantly from corporate corporations and then individuals. Like Brad said, the overwhelming majority, and myself included, paid less taxes over the last several years. So in that case, I'd say, okay, that's a win. That is the biggest wild card, though, is, we look at our federal deficit, like Brad mentioned. If you're cutting taxes here and the government can make money from GDP and consumption or taxes, it's like, yeah, if that GDP and consumption doesn't go up when the tax rates come down, it's like, okay, that's not necessarily a win, even if it's neutral. But I'd say, broadly speaking, yes, people tend to like right now present benefit and value add. And if you can cut taxes, lower taxes, give a bigger tax credit, all these things, people tend to resonate and like that. And they don't look at the bigger picture of what it could do to the economy, what it could do for the future. Where, again, it's almost like eating cheeseburgers every day for 10 years. It's like, man, I'm happy, I'm happy, I'm happy. Well, on year 11, your cholesterol is now at 300, and your doctor's telling you you're going to have to put a stent in your heart. So, the tax reform can definitely work in that way where, we can get accustomed to a very low tax rate. But if the government is in a financing trouble to provide all the things it does, what do you know? Boom. What's the easiest thing to do? Stimulate GDP or raise taxes? And they're going to go with the easiest thing. So I'd say it's a win broadly, but I think it's got problems. It's almost like winning with steroids, or winning with, again, you got some insider info on how to play the game better than everyone else.
Or a printing press that they can actually just, print money.
Yeah, bingo. So yeah. Never ending supply. We're good.
Yeah. So, Andrew, I'm going to stick with your burger analogy here. Because you could be like, oh, I have the goal of making sure I eat every day. And then you go and eat those cheeseburgers every day. Hey, technically, I ate every day. The goal was accomplished. But those side effects are, oh, now you have heart disease. Oh, now you have a medical bill. Oh, now, you have acne all over your face because all the oils and your girlfriend dumped you and you're alone and you live back with your parents. And, all these things can happen. But technically, you can say, hey, the job was accomplished. I ate every day.